I was taken from my parents at the age of 3 months.
I was taken as an infant from the Charles Camsell Hospital and placed into foster care about an hour away from my home community, and subsequently I was adopted.
I was taken with my brother and sisters from Peace River whenever I was about 3 or 4 years old.
I was taken when I was 3, and I was put into a orphanage and was adopted into a family in Canmore.
I was taken roughly at the age of 5 years old and put in and out of foster care up until 7.
So I was taken at birth from Tuktoyaktuk, Northwest Territories. I was adopted to a German family.
I was taken when I was 4 months old and in foster care my whole life until I was 19.
I was taken at a very young age. I don't remember the first 10 years. I was in foster care until my auntie took me at the age of 10.
Hi, I was taken from my mother at the age of 7.5 with some sisters, and we were separated.
I was put into foster care when I was about 9.
I was taken at birth and was in foster care for about a year and then was adopted out and raised in Kamloops.
And I was taken at birth and I was adopted out at the age of 3 months.
I was taken when I was under a year and in foster care for a couple years and then adopted when I was 3.
The 60s Scoop was a dark chapter in Canadian history, when thousands of Indigenous children were taken away from their families and communities by child welfare authorities. They were placed in foster homes or adopted by mostly white families across Canada. Many of them lost their connection to their culture, language, and identity. Some of them faced abuse and neglect. The 60s Scoop had devastating and lasting effects on the survivors and their families. The government claimed that they were acting in the best interest of the children, but they ignored their rights and needs as Indigenous people. They also failed to consult or involve their families or communities in any decisions about their welfare.
My name is Crystal. I am originally from Edmonton, Alberta, and I currently live in Australia. So I am the 5th of 9. I was not aware of the 4 older than me. From when I can remember, I was in foster care from I think 5 was when I can first remember my first home. And I was in and out of homes up until the age of 7. In those times, I've had siblings been born. One of them was born after me 3 years later. So we were placed together in homes. And from what I can remember, I think I was in maybe 8, 9 foster homes by the time I was 7, in which I was placed with my current family, which then later adopted me. So Candace and I were put in the same home together, and I think I was 18 and Candace was 15. Then Carrie came into our care. She was with us for, I don't know exactly how long, maybe 6 months, I think. And then they got removed, but I was already 18 years old, so I kind of phased out. And I stayed with my adopted family. And we just grew up in that home together. Carrie, like I said, was there briefly, and then she left. And then I moved to Australia. Like I worked, so from 18 until 29, I lived with them. I didn't move out. I lived with them until I then went to Australia on a working holiday visa. And I was there for a year. And I met my husband in that time. We got engaged, and I came back home for 2 months, found out I was pregnant, and told my mom that I was pregnant and engaged, and moved back to Australia. I've been there ever since. So now I have 2 daughters that are both Australian, and yeah.
Hello, I'm Candace, and I am from Edmonton, Alberta. Am I a 60s Scoop survivor? To a degree. I'm a generation that is affected by the 60s Scoop. My mother and my grandparents were more, I think, affected in the basics of it, what it was, and based on their trauma that had been induced from the situation, I then became affected. So I wasn't entirely scooped, I think, in my head, the way I think how the 60 scoop is, because it, you know, but I did live in care, so, which is second generation, you know. So the younger years, I have memory, probably about as early as 3. Quite a few homes jumped around, like near to a dozen, probably within a 5-year time frame. There was one home I was in that was actually friends with another foster parent who we actually had considered family to a depth. And so from there, one day it was like that. For me as a child's perspective, we went from that to roles reverse. So mom and dad became the other people, and the other people became whoever they became. And my sister Crystal and I, we made a pact when we were little. I was 5, she was 8. And we're like, you know, we're gonna change our stars, basically, is what we said. You know, like, we're gonna switch the script and we're gonna work it. And this is what we're gonna do. And till this day, her and I are acing it. It's like, yeah, go us, you know, we rock. And because, you know, people look dark upon other people, and it's just like, you don't know the other side of the fence. You don't know, you know, it could be a battlefield over there while you're sitting with your tulips and your green grass. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, it just, so it's crazy, because it's just, now I have other siblings who are coming, and it's just, you know, like, their stories are different too. Their experiences are different. Their words, the things that stuck in their head, you know. And for what? You know, like, my sister sent me a thingy on Facebook a bit ago, and it was like, Indian baby for sale, $10. Are you freaking kidding me? We're selling babies? Like, I'm too scared to sell my darn dog. And she's like, she's a doggo, right? You know, but to see something like that is absolutely discouraging. I've gone through a lot of healing in regards to it in like the past 20 years, basically since before I had my kids. And it does affect me if there's triggers, kind of, sort of, like someone mentions there's a scent, there's, you know, a sight that's similar, it'll come back to me. But I really try to live in the moment. Like, we're right here, right now, let's do. So, yeah.
My name is Kenneth Montgomery. I was originally from Edmonton. I'm from the Cayugan Cree Nation up in Treaty 6. I was adopted into a family in Canmore. I lived there for about 20 years. Very familiar with this area of Kaninaskis. And yeah, 45 years old. And my story is actually, it's pretty unique. I was, as far as I remember, I think I was 3 years old. And there was a time in my life where I wasn't sure who my mom was, and I basically was moving around a lot. I think we weren't really settled, and at one point I think she couldn't take care of us, so I was put into an orphanage in Edmonton. It was called the Atonement Home. Was there for a year. Was in a foster home in Edmonton. Lived there for about a year, and in that time they had no recollection. They had no record of how old I was. They just went by what I looked like. So at the time I looked like a 5-year-old boy. They put me in grade 1. They didn't know anything about me. Well, in that year that I was there, they found out that I was actually 4. So they put me in grade 1 when I was 4. They said I passed grade 1, which was interesting. In that same year, they gave me a birthday cake with the number 5 on it one year. And then the next year, it was another 5. And I remember going back and going, wait a second, can't these people count? Like, I'm 6. And they had to break it to me. They couldn't, that lie, right? So basically they told me, you know what, Ken, you're only 5, but guess what? You're the only kid in the whole world that has 2 5 birthdays. And that was special again. I ran with it, and that's what it was. After that, I was adopted into a family into the Montgomerys, who lived in Canmore for about 20 years. Actually, no, they lived there longer than they were. I think it was 40 years they were there. But interesting about my story was, even though I was put in different spots, it's fortunate to be adopted with half of my siblings. So my brother Craig, my brother Sean, my sister Holly, we were all adopted into the Montgomerys in Canmore. So we have that kind of a core group. And then interestingly enough, I found out that I have other siblings that I actually met not too long ago in the far reaches of Australia. And I think it's cool that something is, I won't say it's traumatic, but certain things happen and it kind of comes around. And I think it's how you deal with stuff that kind of makes you resilient, right? So.
When you physically see your family with signs greeting you when we come into the airport, it was kind of surreal actually, because when we went through customs, we went through some doors, it was like we had the airport to ourselves, because we walked through these doors and then all of a sudden there was 8 people standing there with a sign, nobody else around. It was bizarre. Anyway, and I walked out, and before I even got out, my youngest had ran actually to my siblings and gave Holly the biggest hug. And when I saw that, that's when I was just like, this is unreal, you know, like all my sisters and seeing them crying and seeing my children. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Intense, and it wasn't even a seeing her. It was a knowing I had the opportunity to, right? Like if it gets to just the thought of the opportunity or the dream, it was great, like more than great. It was crazy though, because we were just driving to pick her up, to bring her here yesterday. And all her favorite songs that her and I used to jam to as kids growing up, she's just belting out, right? It was cute, it was great, it was awesome. Like, there's no love like Crystal, you know, like I've held it together, you know, for the sake of this family, but internally, just the joy, you know, and her kids, like, holy cannoli, and they're amazing. I love those 2 girls, they're awesome, like.
The 60s scoop is a topic often forgotten about, but not by the survivors. The pain of losing their identity and culture is still fresh for many, and is the basis for the settlement reached by survivors and the federal government in 2017. The settlement included compensation for eligible survivors, as well as funding for healing initiatives like the 60s Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta's Healing Gathering that took place in Kaninaskis in May of 2023.
My name is Sandra Relling, and I'm from Stony Plain, Alberta. Right now, my current role is as the president of the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta, just coming together with the rest of the board members to make sure we have the best gathering possible for the participants who are coming. When you've been a part of the 60 Scoop, you really tend to believe that you're the only one that this has happened to. And we've come to realize that there are thousands of us who have all experienced very similar upbringings, very similar histories. The trauma is very similar. And the biggest healing that we've found is when we're able to get together and share with other people what our backgrounds are, and begin to understand that we aren't the only ones anymore, that there are other people that share what we've been through, that at some point in time we're able to reach out and develop those friendships with them. And it helps keep us healthy in a very mental and emotional way, because it's really nice knowing that there is someone out there that knows exactly what you've been through and what you're going through. From day to day, we are really running a gamut of different ceremony opportunities, different learning opportunities about the cultures that we were removed from. So the first morning, we're going to have a teepee raising where all the participants are going to be involved and learn about the teachings behind what it means to raise a teepee and what those poles signify. Then we're going to move into a sharing circle inside the teepee, and for many people that'll be the first time that they've had the opportunity to do that. We've brought in elders from different nations across Canada to help support survivors as they're going through this week, to give them an opportunity to ask questions in a very casual manner, because many people that have gone through the 60 Scoop don't necessarily know those protocols yet about how you would approach an elder and what kinds of questions you can ask, or even how to ask them. So this will give them a really good foundation on some of those teachings. So we'll move from there into different activities. One will be painting, and really looking forward to that and having people move through those different sessions. Another one is going to be rattle making, and we're also doing a medicine pouch. We're having participants be able to take away their own smudge kit, so that when they go back to their home territories that they're able to have that opportunity to smudge. We're going to teach them the significance behind smudging and what that means. For some of them, they've never had the opportunity to do that. So it's a whole new experience for them. In the afternoons, we're going to be doing crafts. We have a lady coming in who is Nakota. She's Cree Nakota actually, and she's coming in to do a lot of those cultural teachings behind natural laws and medicines and the significance of different ceremonies, to allow the participants to be able to have a better understanding of what it is we've lost from going through the 60 Scoop, and having a little bit more knowledge when they leave here of how they are as Indigenous people, and opening the door for them, I guess, to have the opportunity moving forward that if they choose to pursue more understanding, that we've given them a starting point. And we will culminate the week with a ceremony, and we are bringing in Blackfoot elders, that's their teaching, to explain this ceremony for survivors about calling your spirit home and the significance behind that, and what it means to Indigenous people to call your spirit home from these different places that you attend, so it keeps you whole and it keeps you grounded.
The 60 Scoop is not just history. It is part of our present reality as Indigenous people living in Canada today. It affects our families, our identities, our cultures. It also challenges us to confront ongoing issues such as racism, colonialism, reconciliation, and self-determination. The 60 Scoop reminds us that we have much work left to do.
My name is Crystal Samagnis. I am living in Temagami, Ontario now. Let's see here. I was scooped several times, actually. The first time was at birth. I think I was taken, back and forth between my mother and the system probably about 5 or 6 times. So the last time I was made a permanent ward was 1973. I was adopted in 1974. I was born in 1971. When I was 18, I found out that I was the youngest of 7. I have my oldest sister, Cleo, No, wait. First it was Johnny. He was scooped to the States. He lives in Pennsylvania. He's still alive. And then it was Cleo. She was also scooped to the States in New Jersey. She is no longer with us. Then it was my sister Annette. She was scooped to Ontario and then California. And she is no longer with us. Then it was my sister Christina, who was also scooped with Annette, because they're full-blood sisters. And she was scooped to Ontario and then California. And she is still alive. She's in Vermont. Then it's Mark. He was scooped to Martinsville, Saskatchewan. And he now lives in Edmonton, and I haven't spoken to him probably about 3 years. And then me. I was scooped to Wynyard, Saskatchewan. And yeah, I pretty much lived there my whole life. I was in Eston, Saskatchewan for a bit, in Saskatoon. My own parenting style, when I was growing up, I think the best way to explain it is I'm an activist now, and so I'm in contact with a lot of people, a lot of displaced Indigenous people, and the issues that they face. And in that, I see a lot of similarities between Indian residential school survivors, 60 scoop survivors, millennial scoop survivors, and all of those who are genuinely displaced by child welfare policy, government, and other factors that were imposed on Indigenous people. And so, with myself, my parenting style came about because what was I saved from? I had a conversation with a 60 scooper about 3 months ago. And they said to me, you and me, we're one of the lucky ones. I said, how is that? And she said, we are not statistics. She says, if it wasn't for my adoptive family, I wouldn't have this life now. I own a home, I have a job, I contribute to society. And she goes on, all these clicking this little colonial checklist. And I'm like, oh, so you're safe from that, were you? She said, yes. And although I didn't say anything to her, I thought, that's unfortunate. That's an unfortunate viewpoint that you have. Very unfortunate. I wasn't safe from that, even in my white family. My mother abused me every day. I was sexually abused. I was spiritually abused. And I was physically abused every day. Whether it was in my school or at home. There was no one to save me. And as I grow older, this becomes more apparent. I'm deaf in my right ear because my mother was left-handed. And her knee-jerk reaction was to slap me across the head. Even this injury, I was stabbed by a fellow classmate in grade 9, and the pen just stuck out of my knee. And it was me who got in trouble. And I didn't tell them how badly I was hurt. She stabbed me through my jeans, and I ripped the pen out. And I knew there was a lot of damage, but no, it was me who got in trouble. So while I was experiencing all this abuse, I knew it wasn't right. I knew that wasn't right. And I knew that wasn't the way human beings should treat each other. So I had this little wish list. I wish I had a mom who told me she loved me. I wish I had people who looked like me. I just had this great big wish list. And I said, if I ever have a child, I will be that wish list for them. I am 52 years old. For 45 years, I carried a great deal of shame about not speaking my language, about not growing up on reserve, about not knowing how to be with my people or how to be Plains Cree. All of these sacred things were stolen from me. Today, I live without shame. I live without shame because I believe the 60 scoopers were never alone. I believe a spiritual presence came with us. And I truly believe that I am Creator's child.
Hello, my name is Daniel, and I am currently in Edmonton, Alberta. The year is 1971. When I was apprehended, I was 2 years old, and my younger sister was apprehended with me. She was 5 months old. We stayed in the same home for 14 years until I aged out at age 16, and then I was allowed to go see my original family. I left my foster parents, who I called mom and dad, for 14 years to go see my biological parents. In the beginning, it went good, but as the weeks went by, I felt out of place. There was the language barrier. They were Cree speaking, and when I left the foster home, I was speaking French. So I went back to my foster parents and then realized that the same thing happened to them that happened to my foster parents, where I felt I didn't belong there either. So I took it onto myself to grow up at age 16, and I went my own way. The foster home in itself was good, but the only thing that made it ungood was their stepson, who was a predator, and he found great joy sneaking into my room and my sister's room when I was 4 years old, and those visits continued for about 2 years until he left the home. He went to college, and that's when the sexual abuse stopped. I kept it away from my foster mom until I was 21, and I finally told her. That was 6 years after I left the home. I told her what her son was doing to me and my sister, and she had asked me why I never told her until then. And my answer was easy, because I was 4 years old, and my predator told me if I were to tell somebody, something bad would happen. It doesn't hurt me no more to talk about it, because every time I tell this story, it strengthens that little boy inside of me, because forever I was an adult with the mindset of a troubled 4-year-old boy. And over the years, I let this boy be quiet, and the more I told the story, the more he was quiet and he was put to rest within me. I had a rough time doing this all my life, and I used to always get angry. I used to always get emotional, but mostly it was anger. And the way I would defeat my anger was with alcohol. I am now 9 months sober, straight, I had done 9 months before this, and I fell off briefly for about 2 weeks, and I have found different ways of coping with my trauma in a good, positive way. And I no longer get mad when I tell my story, but I have to admit that after I talked about it, it exhausts me mentally and physically. So I'm willing to tackle that when it happens later on this evening. One of the things that happened, which is unique in my situation, was not only was my family apprehended, but my dad's siblings' children, his nieces and nephews, were also apprehended. Now, when I got aged out, my cousins aged out too. And we understood who we were family, but like I said, I couldn't grasp onto it. I tried for years to be part of it, but the more I tried, the more angrier I got because I couldn't fix the situation. I thought that talking and trying to talk to them about their experience would help, but I also found out in doing so, it also led to consumption of alcohol, consumption of drugs, and nothing ended good once I was done. Healing starts within oneself. I was tired of always ending up in jail, always getting in trouble, all around drugs and alcohol. Yes, I had used it to cope, but also at the same time, I was also noticing that coping with alcohol was also getting me into trouble within society. So I quit cold turkey pretty well. And what helped me along the way was faith and faith and faith. 3 things. Now, when I say faith, that's how I understand my higher power within my own way. People have creator, people have God, people have something else, a higher power. I was confused forever about what my higher power was until I knew it all my life. It was God. Now, I'm going to leave it at that. But I got tired of being miserable. I got tired of not letting go. And once I decided to let go, my life changed. My healing started, and it's going to take the rest of my life. But I decided a few years back that I was not going to take this misery, pain, all the bad experiences from being a 60 Scoop survivor to my grave. I was going to make peace with myself, and with the help of God, that happened.
My name is Rebecca Malizdrovich, and do you want, like, where I'm from? I don't really know how to answer that. I am from High River, Alberta at this moment. So my story is I was taken at birth. I was placed up for adoption immediately. I was adopted into a strict white Roman Catholic family. Went to Catholic school, the only Native girl in the Catholic school. My father's side of the family was very against us. We didn't belong, we didn't deserve the family last name. Santa would come at Christmas and there was 28 cousins growing up, and he'd bring presents for everybody except for myself and my older brother. The school we went to the principal would pull us out just to tell us that we needed to conform to the way they wanted us to conform to. I remember growing up taking etiquette classes, being forced to go into classrooms with young white women and learn how to be like them. My mom and her side of the family were very supportive of our Indigenous heritage. The two parents that adopted us didn't end up staying together. They separated. A lot of the issues in the household had to do with the fact that we were Native kids and they were both white. But my mom, I thank her for everything she did. She, growing up, went to elders herself, found reserves, made contacts on reserves, taught herself how to bead, taught herself how to make moccasins so she could incorporate our heritage into growing up as well. She took us to powwows, but it was very difficult growing up because one half of the family is you need to be white, and the other half was you need to be Indigenous, and I still struggle with where I belong. I did find my biological mom when I was 19. I was really excited. She was a part of my life for 3 or 4 years until I had my own daughter, and about 3 months after I had my own daughter, her husband made it very clear to me that she no longer wanted me a part of her life anymore. So it's like I lost my biological mom twice. And I still struggle with that. Why would somebody want to meet you and be a part of your life and then just walk away again? As far as my biological father's side goes, apparently he doesn't even know I exist. So I did find a letter when I was younger that my biological mom had written me, and in it stated that she always wanted to have kids, and she was told she could never have kids. And she found out she was pregnant, and she was working with a social worker, and she realized with the social worker that she couldn't be a mom. And then that's as far as she went with her story. I do know there's a half-brother out there somewhere. He was taken at the age of 5. I have a half-sister that was born to a white man that was never taken. She stayed with my biological mom and was raised by her. The steps I'm taking in my healing process is coming to functions like this. I've been trying to connect with elders in communities. I'm really struggling with my healing journey because I still feel like I don't belong anywhere. My home reserve is in Ontario. I was raised in Manitoba. I moved to Alberta in '99. I've been here half my life over half my life now. The traditions and cultural practices I've been taught and have learned are all from this area. And part of my healing journey is I'm looking to reconnect with a community, and I can't connect to my community in Ontario because it's a 3-day drive away. I've tried to connect to communities out here, but they won't accept me because my home reserve is from Ontario and I'm a 60s Scoop member. It's almost like they look at me and think there's something wrong with me. I try and attend as many functions as I can and ceremonies if I hear about them. I know part of my story is a little unique from everybody else's. I had the opportunity to get my hands on my live birth certificate. I was always told that I was given a name at birth. I came to find out I was never given a name. I'm a number.
Survivors of the 60s scoop felt like they were the only ones traumatized, but left the healing gathering feeling a sense of belonging. The 60s scoop Indigenous society connected them with culture, language, and brought them out on the land. Of the 39 survivors who attended, many felt they had a new family, and the effects of the gathering will be felt for a lifetime.
Parents lost, children taken, families destroyed, cultures shamed, ignored, and forgotten. The decisions that led to that personal trauma, many of those decisions, Mr. Speaker, were made right here on this floor in this chamber. The government of Alberta owes these people an apology. To appreciate the trauma these women and men lived through, we need to hear it from them in their voices. Kids, babies, toddlers, teens, ripped from your families. The 60s scoop was an assault on Indigenous identity, your sense of self and who you are. To you, the survivors of the 60s scoop, to your children, to your parents, to the rest of your families, and to your communities, from me, as Premier of Alberta, from all of us here, as the elected representatives of the people of Alberta, and on behalf of the government of Alberta, we are sorry. For the loss of families, of stability, of love, we are sorry. For the loss of identity, of language and culture, we are sorry. For the loneliness, the anger, the confusion, and the frustration, we are sorry. For the government practice that left you, Indigenous people, estranged from your families and your communities and your history, we are sorry. For this trauma, this pain, this suffering, alienation, and sadness, we are sorry. To all of you, I am sorry.